Have you ever made a stupid sewing mistake, ruined your precious fabric and wanted to cry? I have. We've all been there, haven't we? So I've pulled together my 5 top tips to avoid making silly sewing mistakes. So if that's going to help you and you're interested, grab yourself a brew and let's wrangle those sewing mistakes together. Hi there, I'm Christine the Gemini Stitcher and welcome to my sewing space. I've been sewing for nigh on 40 years on and off, and I've made some really silly mistakes over the years, but I've got 5 tips that will hopefully help you and stop you from making silly mistakes that I made. But let's be honest here, girls. We all make mistakes when we're sewing, and it's just something that we have to live with. But just a gentle reminder every now and then of what you should be doing can help keep you on track. So hopefully my little 5 pointers will help you as well. Let's talk about fit. This is the most difficult thing that anybody who's sewing has to tackle. Once you've mastered how to actually sew a garment together, does it actually fit you? Well, let's talk through how you can try to make sure that the garment you're making with love and time and effort and beautiful fabric is actually going to fit you at the end. Modern patterns, and particularly indie patterns and PDF patterns, all tend to have your body measurements and your finished garment measurements on them. And that helps you decide how much ease is actually in a pattern. So if your bust body measurement, for example, says it's 35 inches and the finished garment measurement for your bust area says that it's 40 inches, that tells you that there are 5 inches of ease in that garment. Now, you can sort of try and visualise it, and you might think 5 inches of ease is an awful lot, but a good way to actually see how much that ease is sitting on your body is to get your tape measure and get a friend if you've got one to help you. Put it round your, we're talking about the bust area, so put it round your bust area, put it at the 40-inch mark or the measurement that it says is the finished garment measurement, and just see how much space to move around there is in that garment. And if you're happy with it, then that's great. If you think, that's it still feels a bit snug even at that, then go up a size. If it feels huge, go down a size. What I'm saying is, and I've learned, don't always go off the measurements that are on the book, in the booklet or on the pattern, because they're not necessarily pinpoint accurate. So always do that with a tape measure, helps you to visualise. The other way that I make sure that the pattern is measuring the right size is, before I even cut it out, mark the size on, say, the front bodice, if it's a dress, mark it out on the pattern, and then measure the actual size on that pattern piece. So if it's a front bodice that's on the fold, it's going to be half. So measure it to the underarm, to the centre, times that by 2. So you get the full measurement of the front, and then do the same with the back. Add it all up and see if that matches what it says in the booklet. If it does, great. If it doesn't, which has happened to me in the past, and I've done the tape measure trick, absolutely fine with it, cut the pattern out, sew on the pattern because I'm confident it's going to fit. I've used the seam allowance, that's on the booklet, in the booklet, try it on and it's too tight. There's nothing worse than doing that. That feeling, that sinking feeling is horrible. So just take a few minutes and actually physically measure the pattern pieces and see that they're the size that it says. And hopefully that will help you, by doing all those little things before you even start, will help you to get a good fit on your garment. Why make a toile? It's something a lot of confident sewists tend to neglect, and I do as well if I'm honest. But what we should all be doing, it's all to do with fit again. The next thing that you're going to do is, if it's a dress, just get an old sheet. I have a roll of cheap polycotton, horrible colour of pink, that I picked up for about 10 quid somewhere because nobody wanted it, perfect for toiling. And I've been using it for a couple of years now, on and off. So if I was doing a dress and it was a pattern company that I'd not used before, I'd just cut the bodice of that dress out, do a cheap and dirty mock-up of it, not do any overlocking, just sew it together where it needed to be sewn together, just for trying on purposes. And try it on, see how you're feeling it. Just taking that even take an hour. Might only take you, there's only 3 pieces to it, a sleeve, a front and a back. It's only going to take you half an hour to whiz it together, to try on. You can make the adjustments on that bodice section then, transfer them to your pattern, and again, your fit's going to work a lot better, isn't it? You'll be more confident in what you're doing when you cut into your precious fabric. Let's talk naughty notches. I'm in the gang of naughty notch ignorers. I admit that I do it and I shouldn't, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why I and you should be marking your notches and your markings on the pattern, on the fabric, from the pattern to the fabric, before you even start sewing it. Just do it. It'll make life so much easier, and here's why. There's a few reasons. Notches are landmarks on your fabric, and they help you to line your seams up properly and set alarm bells off for you. The notches don't match. Why? You might have cut it out wrong, but it might be that you're actually matching it up to the wrong seam, which is what I've done recently. Yes, 40 years of sewing and I still make mistakes. I was at a social, that's my defence, and I ended up sewing a sleeve into a neckband. How crazy is that? But it's not though, is it? Because it was a curved neckband, the sleeve was curved, and it's an easy mistake to make. But only if you've not put your notches in. So if I put my notches in on a sleeve, the front and the back of the sleeve have 1 notch for the front and 2 notches for the back. So the first point is it makes sure you're putting your sleeve in correctly, the right way round, and also that you're not putting it in your neckband, because there's no notches in the neckband. So I would have thought, oh, where's the notch? Looked again, hopefully realised that I needed to put it in the armhole, not in the neckband, Christine. So notches are important, and I'm going to strive to use them going forward. There's also other markings on your pattern, and if there's dot markings, if there's markings for pleats, markings for bust darts, put all those markings in your pattern. And you can use tailor's chalk, you can use tailor's tacks. I personally like tailor's tacks because a mark with a removable, erasable pen or chalk can come off and wear off, and then you've got to realign it and put it back on. A simple tailor's tack works good for me every time. And talking of the darts at your bust line, don't just put the tailor's tack at the centre of the dart. You've got your 2 notches that you snip at the side. And then if you're a beginner sewer, get yourself a ruler and your pen or your tailor's chalk. When you're ready to sew that dart, physically draw those lines in and meet them up and line them up, and then you will get a perfect dart. You're not going to waver, you're just going to follow that line, and it works, and you get good darts. So mark your dart lines in to keep them neat. I'm going to now talk about a couple of fabrics that can be a nightmare to sew with, and a couple of things that I use to make them easier. So the first one is jersey fabric, and in particular viscose jersey. It has a life of its own, and it can be a nightmare to sew with, particularly when you're sewing your hems and your cuffs, because it wants to curl the opposite way than you want to sew it. And I use this, it's best press. So I press this where my hems are going to be, iron them, it stiffens the fabric slightly and stops it moving around. In addition to that, with jersey fabric, I also use an item called Stretch Fix, which is absolutely brilliant for hems. It stops you, particularly if you're twin needling and you end up with that tunnelling, or you end up with a fluttery, rolly hem that you don't want. You want it to be flat and it all curls and waves because it's stretching out. Stretch Fix. You can buy it on a roll and you can buy it in a strip. It irons on, peel it off, sticks your seam down and makes it rigid while you sew it, and then it won't stretch out, and when that garment's washed, it washes away. So there are a couple of things I definitely use when I'm sewing with jersey fabrics. And the last thing I do, particularly with jersey fabrics, is I use clips, not pins. Because if you're sewing on an overlocker, never use pins. It can damage the blades, it will damage the blades, and if one of those pins breaks while you're overlocking, it can fly out and go in your eye, and oh, you really don't want that to happen. So clips, not pins, on the overlocker. And finally, let's talk about viscose fabric. It can be a bit of a nightmare to sew with, can't it? And I'm just going to say, best press. It works every time. Use best press on all your seams and it will help you sew that viscose, keep it under control, and you'll get good seams, and it washes out afterwards, but it keeps that fabric a lot more rigid where your seams are. And the last thing that I use when I'm particularly with viscose fabrics is stay tape. It's a interface strip with a chain link up the middle of it, and you can use it when your instructions tell you to do stay stitching. You can use the stay tape instead. It's easier, it will definitely give you good necklines, they won't stretch out, which is a problem when you're a beginner sewer, particularly I think with V-necks. To get them absolutely perfect, use stay tape and not stay stitching, and it will work every time. So I hope I've given you some ideas on how to not make silly mistakes and to improve your sewing skills and the look of your garments and have the confidence to make some stunning garments this year. Happy sewing, and if you've got any tips of your own, please put them in the comments and then we can all share with each other. Bye for now, and I'll see you all soon.